what are the important questions to ask? Now, you're all, as young entrepreneurs or hopefuls, is one of the things one of the things in the name of case study that I'd love to ask you guys is, because even with Eric's willingness to expose his investments that haven't paid off, I wasn't here, and I do apologize again for not being when Eric was describing who he is to you. He's another guy who's worth studying because he's been quite successful at the things that he's done. And success is not necessarily always measured in dollars. Well, that's another discussion. But I would love to ask you guys, for everyone's value here, I hope, is when you were starting out and embarking upon any one of, but let's, if you would, focus on those things that were successful ventures for you as business people. What did you face as what were, in the beginnings, issues you saw that you had to overcome, and how did you go about overcoming them?
You know, you think about, if you just sort of think about things methodically, that's what I was doing. I said, well, you got to, and I actually decided to do a tech side of business, right? Start a technology business. Probably didn't matter what kind of business it was. And I figured, but I needed somebody to work with that would handle the technology, and I met two guys that I worked with. You know, and that was kind of methodical. I may have picked my employer on the basis of I thought I'd meet people there. You know, probably like getting married too, because you spend more time with the people that you work with early days. And I picked my partners like really carefully because I figured we'd be spending a lot of time together. We did, you know. That was important. I remember in business school, the one thing I took these entrepreneurial classes. That entrepreneurial class in business school was probably like the best class I took, because you get people come in, start businesses, they tell you about stuff, and you sort of pick up little things. And so I tended to try to surround myself with smart people and good advisors. That worked. You know, it turns out to work pretty well. I started my business, I was 28 years old when I started Brooktrap Technology back, a long time ago. And back then, that's before the internet. You know, I remember a guy that I used to work with. I gave him a business plan. He was a venture capitalist. He had become one. He said, "Hey, that's a really good business plan. They taught you how to write really well in business school. You're not going to get any money." I said, "Why?" He said, "You're not 30." I said, "What?" He said, "The race doesn't start till you're 30." I said, "What?" And we went out and found customers, and it turns out, for what we were doing, we found customers, and then the investors in those customers said, "Cool idea. We'll put some money into it. We don't know if you guys are good enough to do it, but we know the idea is good." Because a lot of guys, when they start businesses, you need money from somebody to help you get going, unless you can come up with the way to sort of print money without asking for it. So you try to raise money from people, and you approach people. Think about if you had money to invest in something. People come to you, and all they're doing is hitting you with risk. Because you could, I was going to say put your money in the bank, but that may not be a great idea these days. But put it under your mattress. You're not going to lose it then. And people come to you, and we had risk. We had huge risk to anybody we approached. The thing we were building had never been built before, so there's a lot of technology risk. Would anybody want to buy it? There was market risk. And then on top of that, none of us had ever done it before. So we're given like huge people risk. So if you think about that, now you're asking somebody to give you money. We were asking people that at the time, this was the mid-'80s, write a check for $25,000, $50,000. That's real money today. That was real money then. I mean, probably 4 or 5 times that then. And unless you can get the risk reduced in someone's mind as a potential investor, it's really hard to get something off the ground. And the way we did it was by finding the audience, by finding the customer, and then the people that invested in that business. So they saw and we built a prototype of what we were doing. So it reduced the technology risk. We reduced, in their minds, the market risk. Would anybody buy it? And then they said, the only risk really here is the people. Can they do it?
And there's something so interesting that applies, again, to the question about how do you differentiate. One of the things that I just love as an example that really sheds light on, which is that I represent some artists who have so much success, so much brand equity globally, that they think that anytime they lend their name to anything, a new business, for example, that they should own a piece of the company. I'll say, "Hey, so-and-so, let's look at this. It's a great idea, great business. You should really get involved." And they'll say, "Well, you know, last time I was on tour, 2 billion people heard and or saw me. So I lend a lot of credibility to this company that, you know, I know you told me the name of it, but I can't even remember it. No one ever heard of it. How much of the business do I get? That's scenario number one. Reduce the risk. Or make more attractive that which you're presenting. If I go to that very same artist and I say, you know the Killers, the band The Killers? Yeah, I love the Killers, man. Those, you know, they're doing this thing. You got to see it. It's unbelievable. It's this new company, and they're using this technology, and they're getting all kinds of exposure on the internet. And they're, oh man, you got to get me involved. You got to, like, how can I do this? How can I be part of it? Not how much of that company can I own, but how can I get how can I get in on the fun, the credibility, and share some of the value and be recognized as being cool, cutting edge, contemporary, and still valid. Very, very interesting. And some of that is how do you, and this is also why for a band, getting on a stage and getting to an audience and exciting that audience, energizing that constituency is that's your customer. And if you can show one excited customer is just a great way to get another 2 or 3.
You know, in terms of, you know, I totally agree with the team. Team is critical, right? And I always do the lifeboat test, you know, with the core team. Would I, you know, co-founders, would I get in the lifeboat with these people, and would they, you know, watch my back? And that's like, that is the most important thing. So I'll echo that. Advisors are really critical. And also, I'll take that a little further, is when you ask advisors for advice, they may like devastate your plan, okay? And they should, right? That's what they should do. And it can be, my first business, I took it to a guy I really respected. He like ripped it to shreds, and we were out raising money. We had to raise money in about 4 weeks because we had a contract, you know, with revenues. And it freaked me out. And I went back and I rewrote it over the weekend, you know, thoughtfully addressed each of his comments. And we put the plan out there, and we raised like $300,000 in 4 weeks. And, you know, ended up being a, you know, the company's doing $60 million a year now. But that guy, I'll never forget it. And I'll never forget how awful I felt when he was like, you know, this is horrible. You know, he was like, he tore it to shreds. But he was the key to getting the money. If I had been pissed off and said, screw you, you don't know what you're talking about, I would not have, the company would never have happened. So take withering advice. That's another important thing. And then the other thing is be evangelical. It's like when you go out and you're raising money, you've got to be evangelical. You've got to love this idea and your team members, and you've got to complement each other. You know, you've got to be a coherent team. If you're not, nobody's going to give you anything, and it's that's kind of the key thing, I think.
Yeah, I think you know, first of all, you know, passion is obviously an ingredient, and I've always believed that I was on a mission from God to build my business, and I still am, and it's really what gets you through the most difficult times. And, you know, you're looking at when you start a business. I mean, you know, the odds are stacked against you. And again, whether you're a businessman or an artist, the odds of success are generally stacked against you. And when I quit my job on September 9, 2000, I was not an American citizen. I had no money. I did not know anything about technology. So if you think about it, the odds of me building an internet-based business in the United States were probably pretty slim. Well, I got married, so I ended up getting a green card. That's a different story. So where there's a will, there's a way. However, more importantly, you know, I read a great quote from Thomas Edison, who's obviously a great entrepreneur, and he said, you know, why learn math when I can always go and hire a mathematician? And I always kind of believe that, you know, the fact that I was never able to code myself. I wasn't an engineer. I'm not an engineer. The fact that I wasn't the world's greatest finance person, the fact that I wasn't really the world's great at anything, helped me focus on the big picture.